Welcome to Ear Biscuits. I'm Rhett.
And I'm Link. Thank you for allowing us into your ears, your minds, your hearts, and your eyeballs if you're watching on YouTube, on the This Is Mythical channel. Oh, I relish this time, Rhett, where you and I get to just speak with one another at this dimly lit table.
I notice you, interestingly, you're such a creature of habit, but you've made the definitive choice to not say, you don't like to say, when it's just the two of us, you don't like to say this week at the round table of dim lighting, which is very interesting because you usually like to do things exactly the same way every time. You've made a choice though, because if you're not doing it, I know you've made, like you've thought about it. Yeah, I'm not gonna say it, I'm gonna say it a different way.
Yeah, I meant to talk to you about this.
Explain yourself.
That is a relic of the old way that we did Ear Biscuits, where it was very strictly guest related. So there was an assumption. Someone is joining us this week at the round table of dim lighting. Blam. And now it's just as likely to be us as it is somebody else. I don't know, I'm not gonna run the numbers on that. Not technically, but not technically, but mentally for me. When I sit down at this table, like I said,
your mental process now.
I relish just being able to like hash the relish with you, my friend.
May I suggest something that
you may suggest anything you want.
Helps to
Am I obligated to
which
take
is
said suggestion?
Interesting because I'm usually the one that would be like, who cares about tradition?
You're sticklering.
But I have a different perspective on this because I love the phrase so much. I just feel like I think the part that you didn't like, correct me if I'm wrong.
Joining us.
You don't like that part. So you're like, you don't like saying this week at the round table of dim lighting.
Joining us this week. Joining us this week.
I never say joining. That's you, brother. I never say joining.
I don't say it anymore.
I always say this week at the round table of dim lighting, and then we have to say, it's just the two of us. So
and it sounds like an apology, whereas it should be
Yeah, but I think you're throwing the baby out with the bath. You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater because not to get too critical, but what you were saying, I don't think was working. And the way you came back to the round table of dim lighting and you tried to slyly slip it in.
Oh, just now?
When you
conversation?
You came back to it. And
you want, here's what you want. You want to keep as a standard that they can count on a reference to the round table of dim lighting.
Yeah, and I think maybe.
And you know what? I respect that.
Hold on, the table's moving.
I'm gonna take this opportunity while Rhett's faces away from the microphone to make an executive decision that I'm going to say, and I'm Link, this week at the round table of dim lighting, we're gonna blank.
Yeah,
it's my idea.
Exactly.
It's what I was thinking all along.
That's where I was headed with that. So as long as we say that, I'm gonna be fine. And listen,
so let's try again.
Let's change the whole thing.
Let's role play.
I don't really care.
Let's try it.
But I was surprised that you wanted to change it because you usually don't like to change things. So I was just like, what's he thinking? So I just wanted to pry open your mind. But now we're going back to the old way.
You pried it. No, we're not going back to the old way. We're testing out the new way.
Welcome to Ear Biscuits. I'm Rhett.
And just to clarify, you were already welcomed. This is a role play. So don't be confused that we're welcoming you again. Go again, I'm sorry.
Welcome to Ear Biscuits, I'm Rhett.
And I'm Link. This week at the round table of dim lighting, we got lots of good stuff to discuss, but I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
I know it's good. Of course
we shouldn't even comment on how good it is. We should just move on as if
that's good.
We just meant to do it.
Right.
You're doing it right now, Link. You did it right that time, to quote a line from season 2 of Buddy System.
Oh yeah. I feel so much more acquainted with this table and this configuration because over the past couple of weeks, we put a lot of hours in these chairs, recording the audiobook for the Book of Mythicality. That will be available on audible.com. Just go to bookofmythicality.com for all the details for pre-ordering. But
a lot of people ask questions because I posted the picture of us recording and they were like, how's your voice? Because I had shared that I'm having voice troubles. You know what? I made it through. There was only a couple of times where there was like a crack in my voice and I had to start over. That's what's happening when it happens, is there's like a crack in the voice. Only happened like a handful of times. And my voice hurt a little bit at the end of the day, but I don't think I sounded any different. I think I'm gonna sound pretty much the same way throughout the book, like slightly sick.
I think you sounded At one point I was like, can you re-say that whole paragraph because you sounded like you had just woken up.
Yeah, what you don't understand is that I did that on purpose. I thought that would be a nice effect, the just woken up effect. But you didn't like it, so I changed it. Just like, that's how this partnership works.
I think we'll talk more about how excited we are about the Audible version of the book when you can actually purchase and listen to it.
Yeah.
In well, it's not that far off.
Mid-October.
Mid-October, so it's not that far off. We're gonna have this big launch of the book, but I can confidently say, given the special guests who read the parts that they wrote in our book, given their appearances, it's all more exciting that you're gonna have to buy the physical book, pre-order it now, and you're gonna have to get the audiobook because they're two distinct experiences.
They are. They're very complimentary, but they are exclusive in many ways.
Oh man, it was nice to read back through the book and remember everything we wrote.
Our wives sat at this table.
Mm-hmm. Our wives sat here and read the parts of the book that they wrote. I don't know if we've told you guys.
We have.
We have told. I can't remember what we told you.
You really wanted to hold on to that one for a long time.
To me, that's the best thing about the book is that we didn't write part of it. Our wives did.
So say it like 7 times, not just once. That's all I'm saying. I'm gonna say it again.
Yeah, let's just keep saying it.
It's like when you got a movie coming out and you're like, why did that teaser trailer come out 7 months ahead of time? Because why not be excited now and then? You can't be too excited about something, can you?
And our wives did a great job.
They did. They're great readers. They're both completely literate.
I think we both stepped out for the other person's wife to come in and take. I gave Jesse my seat. Chrissy took your seat, and then it was like, okay, we don't need too many cooks in the kitchen. And I like as we were reading, as Chrissy was reading her part, of course, I'm giving some direction. I'm giving my opinion on the emphasis of
I wasn't
Sabalo.
in the room. Yeah, okay. So I'm interested in how.
But that was it was a little risky because
we haven't discussed that.
We could have gotten in a huge fight because it's like I'm very comfortable in this situation, and I'm directing. Directing my wife is a dangerous thing in general.
We got to watch the table here because this is happening here.
Cody's gonna put his finger under the table for the next hour.
There we go, we got it.
Is it a pinky finger or a big toe? What are you putting under there?
It looks like his whole hand.
Just be still.
There's 2 types of people in the world. There's people who go to a restaurant and sit at a wobbly table and don't do anything about it. And then there's people who get the napkin folded up and correct the problem. What kind of person are you?
That's laden with judgment, my friend.
I
think I celebrate the people who can just zen out at a wobbly table. I'm not one of those people, even though I seem to be in this moment. There's a role reversal today.
I'm behaving like you today. I wanted it to be the same way. I fixed the wobbly table.
Yeah,
what's up? And you're like, but you know what it was? You were the one that was, this is what was happening. You were the one who was wobbling
so it's my freaking fault?
If I was wobbling it, you'd be all over it, man.
No, I know what it is. It's the vasectomy.
Oh, you're not wobble sensitive anymore?
I think our personalities melded and we each got a piece of each other.
No, I think what happened is they did something to your balls and it's like they did something to your cochlea or whatever that thing in the inside of your ear is.
My testicle's not in my ear, brother.
No,
you were there.
No, the way males sense wobbling is by the testes. And so
that's why there's 2.
Your wobble sensitivity, it's like a scale.
It's a comparison thing.
And so mine are completely
it's
intact.
Relative.
I was completely, maybe even more sensitive to wobbling, and you lost wobble sensitivity when they screwed, the doctor messed up something.
No, you got some of me. You're acting a little neurotic.
I wasn't that close to you.
You admitted it. You're being a little neurotic today.
Do you think he put part of your vas deferens in my scrotum?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Kiko was there. That didn't happen, did it? He filmed the whole thing and didn't see that.
It was Ben put up a black shield that then Kiko stood behind. I was like, is this like a splatter shield? But it was so if you tilted the camera down, it wouldn't show our junk. Like if you like fell asleep and it was like,
And you saw it in a couple of shots, like a blurry sort of like, it looked like the matte box on the camera was kind of creeping into the frame. That was not the matte box, that was the
splatter guard.
Yeah. Splatter guard is one way to sneeze guard.
Well,
it was the ball guard.
I didn't know if something was gonna splatter. Since we're talking about the vasectomy, we should, and we're turning it into entertainment left, right, and every which way. We should just keep doing that.
Keep milking it.
I'm in recovery still. I don't know. It was Friday. We're recording this
on Thursday.
I don't even know what day
we're basically 6 days out from the surgery.
And I wish I had to ice last night.
Oh, you brought out the piece.
And then ice creates shrinkage, which then keeps everything in place more. And I'm just being real here that like, I'm wearing the tightest pair of underwear I have today because
like your kids?
Yeah, I'm wearing some of Lando's underwear. It's got Superman on
That's
them.
what kids are for.
Superman's cradling my my bowels. Let's not talk about the procedure anymore. I mean, you can watch that.
I just want to talk about, because we didn't talk about it in Good Mythical more, where we talked a little bit about the recovery. We haven't discussed what we did because
the weekend.
I went home right after the
Friday afternoon. We both go home.
Yeah, and we had been told by other men who had this procedure done, taking it easy is really important. We actually didn't. We got together to work a little bit on Monday, but we didn't come into the office and do a regular work day like we typically would do because we were told those first few days is crucial. Even if you feel okay, you need to keep wearing the scrotal support, a very special pair of underwear. Actually wearing them right now.
Yeah, you needed.
I went back to them.
Went back to them.
I was like, I just feel like I need the extra support today.
I threw mine away because they were stained.
Oh gosh, this is too much, man. This is too much. Okay, and you can also get new ones. They sell them at like Walgreens.
I'm not walking in any place and buying that.
Send somebody in. Send your wife in, because it's because they know it's not for her. No embarrassment for her.
I was very much looking forward to. It was kind of a silver lining thing. Like, okay, I'm not gonna be comfortable. I'm gonna have frozen peas, which is, by the way, the best technique because ice melts. Peas stay there. They just get warmer.
And they also can, because of the size of the peas, they can conform.
They mold. They conform to whatever you need. So as a silver lining in knowing that I wasn't gonna be able to do much, I was focusing on not being allowed to do much. Like my family was in agreement. I had somebody in our neighborhood let us borrow their electric recliner for Lily's recovery from back surgery. We have not given it back. And so I was like, I'll give it back after this because I'm gonna be in that recliner. I'm gonna have recliner time. I'm gonna be like a grandpa. I'm gonna stick in that recliner with my frozen peas and every freaking remote just laid out there. This recliner has a tray.
This is in
That's a part of it.
The back room?
In the back part with the big television.
Yeah.
In point blank range. And I'm just gonna sit there and I'm gonna do nothing and everybody understands that. And no one's gonna put me on a guilt trip like when I'm on the toilet on my phone for 30 minutes. It's like, we know what you're doing, Dad.
And Dad makes the decision about what's on the television.
And
right? That was rule number one. I was like, I'm not watching anything with you guys.
That was I did not make that clear and that was a big problem.
I made that clear up front.
Right off the bat, a big mistake on my part. I should have put a sign on the door and then locked it that
I was
said,
like, Daddy's watching daddy shows. That's what I said. Kids, close your doors.
The kids guilted me into like, well, I let them watch part of The Dark Knight, Batman Begins.
Hold on, you watched Batman Begins? That was one of your choices?
No, it was with the kids one Friday night.
Oh.
We were watching something as a family and it's like, you wanna watch a good wholesome movie. Batman Begins. Christopher Nolan, kids, you gotta start learning this stuff.
Right.
And so we're watching it and we didn't finish it. And so then the next day, they insist on watching the rest of the movie with me, which I didn't want to happen. But I was guilted into it.
You started daddy time with the kids? That's how it started?
What?
Yes.
Yes.
This is supposed to be you
time.
time.
Daddy time meaning alone time.
Yeah, me time.
Me time. I finally got rid of them. I hope it's good for you because I'm just getting my bad stuff out of the way, okay?
Okay.
Then I'm like, all right, now you kids go away. I'm sitting here with my peas and I'm gonna watch The Defiant Ones on HBO. This is Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine documentary. I heard great things about it. One of my favorite things to watch is a music documentary. I love hip hop. Dr. Dre doesn't grant a lot of interviews. I heard this was like very revealing, so I was very intrigued. One of my favorite things to watch on a screen is a rap documentary.
Okay.
Super excited. I can't get the HBO Go. The app on my television will not work. I don't understand. It's so freaking slow. I'm like, well, maybe it's just this file. I'm gonna go to like John Oliver. And so then I start watching that and it's creeping along. And I'm like, well, go over to Netflix. I'm like, maybe it's my internet. I got up. I unplugged my router.
Oh gosh, you had to do that?
You gotta unplug the router, then you gotta unplug the what's the internet, the Wi-Fi disc.
You unplug
What's that called?
The modem and then the router.
You unplug the modem
and then plug them back
the router,
in that order.
Then you count to 15, you plug the one back in.
Or 45.
Was that the problem?
You gotta count to 45.
I counted to 15,
Yeah.
I plugged the modem back in.
I don't know why.
I count to another 15 and I plug in the router and then I go all the way back in there and then I gotta restart the television too.
Oh yeah.
I'm jangling my testicles all over the house. This is defeating the purpose of everything.
Right.
Sit back down, put on the Defiant ones. Nothing changed. Nothing changed. I'm like, well, I'll go over to Netflix. Netflix working great.
Yeah, Netflix is very reliable.
YouTube working great. Amazon Prime working great. I got it all, baby, except the one thing that has the one thing I want to see, and it's so slow. Then I'm like, you know what? I have it on cable because I still pay for cable, which is stupid, I think. Except now it's like, ooh, I'm gonna get you.
You can also do the
On
HBO
demand,
Now app.
HBO, I tried that. And I was like, I'll just watch it on my laptop. Didn't work. I ended up going to on demand on my cable box, which you know how frustrating using cable is.
I'm afraid of that whole system.
That whole system is just stupid.
Archaic. It's like a railroad.
And then it started working. This had to have been an hour and a half later. It literally took that long to get to this point.
Man, I feel bad for you. Daddy Time started off real nice for me.
And then Christy had to do some stuff, so Lando's around, and it's a good thing that he doesn't like screens, so it's just like, to be occupied, he has to be like playing games and doing stuff. But he wanted to do that with me, and I felt bad. So I was like, well, I'll play a game with you in the room, but I'm gonna watch Defiant ones. So here I am. I'm like, I can do it all. And then I'm like, it dawns on me very quickly after I'm like, it's not appropriate. Dr. Dre just speaking freely is not appropriate in front of my 7-year-old. So I told him that. I was like, this isn't appropriate for you, but we'll finish the game. And then a few seconds later, I'm like, no, this is not gonna work. You're gonna have to leave.
So he doesn't just start watching what's on the screen if he's in the room with it?
No, it was a documentary. It's Talking Heads. He doesn't care.
Oh, I mean, Shepard though. Shepard has a problem. He's got a screen problem. So I don't care what it was, man. Hellraiser, doesn't matter. He immediately lock on it and
Lando doesn't have that yet.
Absorbing. Well, Shepard.
I bet he'll get it.
No, Shepard had it from age 3.
Well, I guess I
think it's a personality thing.
For the record, I did not let Lando listen to the Defiant ones with me for more than a few seconds.
More than just a few F-bombs were dropped, and then he's had his quota.
Yeah.
Get him out of the room.
But I mean, we've talked very specifically about what we think about those words and what's the most important thing in life. And
those words are for Dr. Dre, son. That's what you say?
Yeah.
And until you are a successful rapper, you can't say them.
Instead, just focus on love and kindness.
I did not go the documentary route. Well, first of all, I made it very clear. I mean, I made it clear days, maybe weeks ahead of time. I was like, want to let you guys know, heads up. And you know how my house is, and it's like, it's very open. And so like, even the living room is open.
Yeah.
So we don't have like a place where you can go into a room and close the door and watch television.
There's like pedestrians coming through your living room.
It's a busy place. And so I had to be very, very clear. I was like, Daddy, it's daddy time. Daddy got his balls operated on, and Daddy needs some time to himself to recover. Okay, kids?
Daddy wanna watch TV.
Daddy don't want no more of y'all running around here. That's why Daddy got this operation. Leave Daddy alone for a weekend. So I made that very clear. Now, it worked with the kids, but my wife was really the problem.
Oh.
And not that I care that my wife is, I mean, I love having my wife around while I'm watching television. The problem is that she was so busy having to leave and go here and there, and she started getting into the things that I was watching and then asking me to stop them.
Pause it.
Stop that and watch something else. So that was the only interruption, the daddy time. What I did is I just caught up on a lot of series that I wanted to watch on Netflix. I finished Friends from College, that the new comedy that's got Keegan-Michael Key in it, which there's a lot of mixed reaction to that. I liked it, thought it was funny, and I finished that pretty quickly, but she kept making me pause that because she's watched a little bit of that with me.
And I just remembered in the middle of my Defiant Ones thing, the reason why it took an hour and a half is because I gave up and because you told me that, I started watching that. But then the kids were coming in and out and that wasn't appropriate either.
No, kids can't.
So then I switched back.
Made a kid stay in the room for that one. Then the thing is she would leave and then when she left I had to watch Narcos because I've been watching that for a while and she's not interested in that. And so then I'm switching between English show and a Spanish show. I'm all confused. So then she comes back and I have to stop Pablo Escobar in his tracks and then immediately begin watching Keegan-Michael Key again. And that was problematic, but I finished that series. And then I was like, I'm gonna watch the second season of Master of None because I haven't watched any of that.
Hold on, you watched all of Friends from College?
I'd already seen the first 5 episodes.
With how many more episodes were there?
5?
You watched 5 more episodes of Friends from College.
I did nothing but watch television for 3 days.
And then you watched Narcos in between that.
Yeah.
And then you went over and you watched Master of None?
The whole second season, and I'm not done yet.
Are you kidding me?
No, I mean, Link.
I've told you everything I saw. I saw half of episode 2 of Defiant Ones.
What were you doing?
That's as far as I got.
That's why you were in more pain than me, man. Daddy laid on his butt on the couch with his balls in a special cradle that the doctor gave him and binge-watched TV till I was blue in the face.
Well, I did some work too. I like gave notes on Buddy System.
I did too. I watched.
No, you didn't.
Yeah,
Don't
I did.
say you did work just because I said I did work.
I watched episode 203 and gave notes, and then 204 had no audio, so I didn't watch that. I don't
know what else I did.
First of all, Master of None. Everybody's like Master of None season 2 masterpiece. It's like I was like, oh, okay, come on now, really. I mean, I agree now. I watched it, and I just, especially watching it just. In the binge format, just like I passively let each episode just roll to the next one. Like the counter says, the next episode in 5 seconds, I just let it happen.
Did you have a catheter in?
I got up to pee a couple of times. But it's so good, man. There are problems, like you notice like in season 1 of Master of None, you're like, the acting is kind of distracting, but because the acting is distracting in Buddy System, I'm willing to forgive it, because when you watch yourself act and you watch comedians act, you're like, oh, I'm not watching this for Oscars or Emmys to be awarded for Best Actor. I'm watching this because it's so well done and written and it's interesting the way they explore things. I loved it. Love season 2. Then
better than season 1, that much better.
Yeah, so I actually stopped watching season 1, I remember. I got most of the way through it. I enjoyed it, but season 2, I was just like, bam, I'm going all the way through. Whoa. Then I moved on.
That's all you were doing though.
To Ozark.
What? You moved on to something?
Yeah, and I'm like 7 episodes deep in Ozark.
I haven't even heard of this one.
That's the Jason Bateman.
That one has like a very cold tint on the thumbnail.
Oh, it has a crow.
I don't watch things where people are tinted blue and there's a crow.
Oh, really?
I want to watch Dre get real. But
okay, my assessment of Ozark thus far.
Is it dark or sad? It looks sad and dark. I don't need that in my life.
It's a poor man's Breaking Bad. That's what it is. It's, white collar, straight-laced dude gets involved in drug crimes. And
Jason Bateman?
Jason Bateman. But so I wouldn't say and has like the straight-laced wife and the kids. It's basically Breaking Bad told in a different way. Not as compelling.
I'm sure he'll appreciate that.
But I mean, listen, that story is a story that can be told multiple times. I mean, I'm 7 episodes deep. I like the show. And now, last night, I got my wife to come in and I did this. You don't typically do this, but I was like, I really want to watch this. So let me give you the quick rundown on what happened in the first 6 episodes. Like I'm the Netflix catch you up thing. Personally, like your personal, this is what happened, this is what you need to know. Can you start watching at episode 7 with me? And she was like, okay. And we watched it and she was into it.
Really?
So yeah, I ingested all kinds of entertainment. and some painkiller, but not a lot.
I didn't take any painkiller either.
I just took the ibuprofen.
I missed out on all of it. I just don't know how to do potato sack. What's it called? Potato couch? Couch potato.
Potato sack? That's a race, man.
sack race. I don't know how to do sack races, guys. Dang it.
Okay, well, we're gonna continue talking about some other important things, including the reaction to us putting the vasectomy video on the internet. But first, we wanna let you know that you are running out of time to be a part of the Tour of Mythicality. We've added matinee shows in New York and Los Angeles. In New York, we're gonna be at the PlayStation Theater on Saturday, October 14th at 1 p.m. And then we're gonna be at the Wiltern in LA on Sunday, November 5th at 12 p.m. So these are, 12 p.m., that's not even matinee, that's just noontime. That's just middle of the day. But you go to tourmythicality.com, get the tickets while you can. They are selling fast. And again, this is the last chance you have to see the Tour of Mythicality in 2017.
In a live version. Also go to mythical.store to support our entertainment. You can get the Ear Biscuits mug, the one we drink out of when we're speaking here. Feel like you're at the round table of dim lighting with this jar. I called it a mug, but it's a jar.
It is a jar. Doesn't even.
It's made of hardened biscuit batter. Yeah. Mythical.store, lots of great stuff there.
And no matter how hard you squeeze it, it does not break. Okay, now, so we as you know, hopefully you know, we documented the entire process of us getting a vasectomy, and we've known for a while that we were going to do this. There's lots of questions like, why would you guys do this? Why would you document it? Well, we've said for a long time that if we ever go through the process of getting a vasectomy, we're going to document it and put it on the internet. And yes, for entertainment purposes, for views, yes, that's why we did it. But also, as you pointed out, it gave you the motivation to actually go through the procedure knowing that you could do it for entertainment purposes.
Well, I'm ultimately motivated for the obvious reasons that any person would be motivated. But I was so peaked, which means faint of body.
Faint of body.
That I just needed one more thing to push me over the edge, and that was, hey, the thing I'm most scared about is going through the process. So it will help me to have cameras there to have to focus my energy of nervousness into entertaining you, and it helps a whole lot.
Oh, it helps so much.
I mean, yes, I was still freaking out. I had to get the freaking Demerol shot, but I would have been freaking out a lot more, I think.
It makes me think that
internally.
I want to have all my medical procedures documented because it gives me this comfort.
Well, I think we've done it. I think we've committed to it.
Okay.
I mean, given the other medical procedures we've already talked about on Ear Biscuits, I'm glad that we've made the decision now.
Yeah. Got that stuff out of the way.
But I think you've been tracking more closely audience reaction to this thing than I have. I watched the video with my family the morning it came out. I read a few comments, but that was it. And I laughed a whole lot, and I was very happy with the final product. Yeah, I loved the music, how the music was incorporated, and I know you and Stevie worked with Casey on that. I think in succession. Yeah,
it was one of those sort of old school. We haven't done that in a while. We haven't gone out and done something and documented it and put it on the show. So I was happy to step in and get involved in the edit.
But what are people saying? What's?
Well, first of all, we could devote an entire podcast to answering continued misconceptions, lingering misconception as to what happened. People who think we got our balls cut off, even though they saw the procedure.
Are these people who watched Good Mythical more? Because I don't want to rehash that stuff.
No. I'm just saying that still is just absolutely nuts, and that was not a pun intended. Usually say no pun intended, but I just said that was not a pun intended.
But it was a pun.
So I'm not going to talk about those misconceptions, but what I will talk about is and again, we talked about, we love to throw things out there and sort of guess what the audience reaction is going to be. And before we released the video, I was like, okay, let's go ahead and just emotionally prepare ourselves. There's going to be a lot of people who don't understand what happened and why we're doing it. Lots of people just just vomit out their ignorance about various subjects on the internet. And when you throw something out like a vasectomy, you're gonna get a million people who do that. That happened. But the other thing we're gonna get is you guys have gone too far. This is officially too far, right? Because there's always this ongoing conversation. We talked about it on Ear Biscuits before. We've been talking about it for as long as we've been in business, brother. People always thinking that we're pushing the limits too far or that somehow the line has moved and we've gotten too close to it and now we've officially crossed it. And so for a lot of people, it was, you guys have done it. I can no longer let my kids watch this show. We saw one comment where it was like, my 12-year-old daughter came to me and told me that she can no longer watch the show because of this episode. And I'm just gonna take this opportunity to reiterate what we said before. Great, good for her. That's great for you. If you've given your daughter that perspective, and that's the perspective that you want your daughter to have, daughter or son, kids, and they came back and voiced that to you and you feel good about it, great. You're doing what you want with your family, good for you.
I wouldn't say great. I believe that I would just say, okay.
Okay.
I don't think it's great.
By saying great, I'm not saying that's the way I do things in my house. I think it's good for you.
But we don't want to say, well, that's sad. We're not gonna render judgment against someone saying this crossed the line for me, so I'm not gonna watch it, or I'm not gonna allow someone in my purview to watch it, one of my kids or whatnot. We are not going to say, well, that's sad, or that's this, or that. We're not saying that.
We're not gonna try to hold on to you. If you want to go,
different points.
If you want to
we're not rendering judgment. We're not trying to keep you. We're not also judging you for saying this isn't for you.
Yeah, if you want to go, you think we cross the line and you want to leave the herd, leave the herd. This is not, no one's forcing you to do any of this.
And people think it's something that, people think the show's something that it's not.
Yeah.
And I that's why we continue to talk about it, just as by way of education.
But I will also say.
And has the line moved a little bit? Maybe.
Well, of course it has, as we've gotten older, as our kids have gotten older. But what I will say is that, as we've said many times before, we don't do anything that we don't let our kids watch. Link has a 7-year-old son, I have a 9-year-old son. We watched the video with them and they laughed at everything that we said. All the talk about balls, all the jokes about our private parts, all the explicit, not in terms of profane, but explicit talk about the private parts. That's stuff that already happens in our homes. Yeah, I mean, I got 2 boys, we talk about balls all the time.
Well, it's not just a boy thing. I mean, I think
no, I'm saying, but they have balls.
Yes, they do.
So we end up talking about the balls a lot.
I mean, Lily has 2 younger brothers, so she's immune to testicular talk. Mm-hmm. It's like breathing air in our home.
Right, you might breathe in a ball if you don't watch out. Well, or at least a ball joke.
A ball joke. We keep them holstered, man.
Yeah, right. Keep them in that supportive scrotal.
Gosh,
scrotal support.
What's the point you're trying to make?
The point is that so far, I'm not saying we're not ever going to create something that we're like specifically, hey, this is just for adults. But what you will know is that we will let you know that it's just intended for adults if that's the case, because we're sensitive to who's watching our videos, but the barometer that we use personally is what we would let our kids watch. And so that definitely does kind of change, but I'm not saying once our kids
they get older, so the line changes. I don't.
But once they become adults, I'm not saying that once our kids are all grown up, that all of a sudden that it's all for adults at that point.
Right.
Because we understand that the content that we create is, by our standards, it is family friendly. That doesn't mean that every family is going to find it friendly, but for what we see as family friendly, like everybody sits down, all ages sit down and enjoy, we still create that kind of stuff. In our house, that means some ball jokes are gonna fly around, especially when you're getting your balls operated on. And also, another big part of why we did the video was, I do think it's educational. In spite of the fact that people watch the videos and still think that we've somehow lost our manhood, I can't help you. If that's the way your brain works, good luck in life. I'm sure you're gonna be okay, but we're probably not gonna have a productive conversation about vasectomies.
Okay. And we did put a warning at the beginning of the video. It is an extraordinary video. So we said what it was gonna contain and what it wasn't gonna contain, and then we
Correct.
we said, here's the point where you can click away.
Yeah, we got lots of opportunities to click
and
away.
but I don't know why you would then go to a parent and then say, so from now on I'm not watching any of their videos because they did this one where they warned me at the top of it that this particular one is more special. Mm-hmm. So I that's a little unfair to us.
Yeah, but we don't mind. Let it be said.
I'm not deeply hurt.
We do not care.
But I can tell you're a little frustrated.
No.
Your eyes widen.
Your
pupils dilate.
I'm frustrated with people thinking that we care. That's the thing that I do care about. It's just like
very ironic.
Yeah. There is a distinction. It's just I want to be if you don't want to watch it, then don't watch it. You don't have I did see somebody say, listen, this is not an airport. You don't have to announce your departure. And I thought that was a great line.
Well, yeah, and they didn't make it up either.
Okay.
Somebody's granddad made it up.
You really? You don't think that was an original joke?
I'm
going to credit the person who I don't know who said it, but
I've never heard anybody say it either. But I could hear that. I can believe that many granddads have said it.
Let's move along to other controversial issues. So it will have been over a week, maybe 2 weeks, by the time this episode is up, that I did the thing that we're going to talk about now.
Yeah. You wrote a piece. I'll call it a piece.
Call it a piece, Link.
You wrote a piece about your perspective of the Confederate monuments coming down in the South, or people's opinion about those monuments coming down or staying.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's on my Twitter. It's a Medium article, which, by the way, if you're not familiar with Medium,
I am not.
It's basically a blogging platform where you can look like you wrote an article. But it's great because
is it citable on Wiki now?
It's essentially a way to create an article, like put a picture in an article, and then it kind of goes into that system. But all you have to do is have like a Twitter account or a Facebook account or whatever to just have one, and then people can follow you. So if I write something else, everyone who started following me because of the first article can see the next one and that kind of thing. You can create series and that kind of thing. Not a sponsor.
But it's a blog post posing as an article?
Well, what's really the difference in 2017, Link?
Ooh.
Yeah. So I would say that it's, in other words, it's not curated or editorialized by any one group. It's completely user-based, but it's presented as articles, and that's how you sort through things, and things are tagged, and related articles come up, that kind of thing. People could comment. So it's called Thoughts on Confederate Memorials from a White Southern Male. I think that's the name of it, but it's on my Twitter, RedMC. You can see that I tweeted it out. Now, what led to this? We're gonna talk a little bit about what led to this, because we're not gonna get into the. You can see what I thought and what I said in the article. Well, let me give you the 1 minute summary of what I said in the article, so you don't have to pause it and go read it.
Yeah, and I'll do that, and I'll say I'm really interested in. I mean, I've read the article and I'm very engaged in that, but I'm also very interested in everything that went around leading up to you actually taking the time to write it, as busy as you are. And the fact that we typically know everything that we're gonna do when it's something like that before it's done, but like, I think we were working apart, like on Buddy System and some different stuff. I got home that night and Chrissy's like, did you see Rhett's article that he wrote? And I'm like, Rhett wrote an article?
Yeah, see?
And so my first thought was, well, I didn't know about this. Rhett wrote an article. I didn't know what it was.
Rhett's got an article business on the side.
I didn't get to read it until I was in bed that night, and I read it and I retweeted it. I mean, we can get into you're welcome. We can get into more thoughts about it. But yeah.
So did Octavia Spencer, Link.
Yeah, for real.
She did.
Oh, awesome. But yeah, I'm also.
But I appreciate your tweet.
I'm interested in yes.
Because it means more to me personally.
The tertiary story that led to the thing, because there's not much that either one of us do that the other one doesn't know about or find out about through the internet. It's just an interesting thing.
Yeah, so it's a very short.
My feelings were not hurt.
It's a very short post.
So it's very happy.
And it basically says, hey, I grew up in the South. I grew up in a culture where pretty much everyone that I knew believe very specific things about the history of the Civil War, and there is very much a kind of a glorification of the Southern cause, and not really stopping to stop and think, well, what do all the black people who live around us think about this particular perspective that we have? That perspective being that, you know, the Confederate generals were good men and the Union generals were bad men, and you know, the South, it wasn't any more racist than the North. And you know, most importantly, the Civil War wasn't even about slavery, it was about states' rights. Lots of things that you're taught, and so you kind of have this perspective that, oh, well, all the stuff that you hear about in books and stuff is wrong. It's actually this, that, and the other. And
I'm nodding my head because absolutely I heard all the exact same things. I mean, I was in many of the same conversations.
And so, of course, when the discussion of Confederate memorials comes up, there's lots of like, well, this is erasing history. That's what you keep hearing. Oh, people are erasing history. And my point is that these monuments, the vast majority of these monuments, they in themselves were an effort to erase history because they were themselves the glorification of the Confederate cause. Many of them financed by the Daughters of the Confederacy, between the before like 1895 to the First World War, and it was a movement in the South which goes on to this day to kind of venerate and honor the Southern cause and kind of rebrand what actually happened. And a lot of those monuments were put up for those reasons. So it's totally understood now that people are kind of offended by them because they're not teaching history, they're honoring and sort of rewriting the past in many cases. So my point was, you're not gonna dissemble racism by taking down a monument. And so I'm actually not like a huge like, hey, I wanna go out there and rip these things down. That's not what I'm about, but I understand.
Which literally happened in Durham, North Carolina.
But I understand the perspective, and what I said is, because these things are symbols, and the people who put them up and finance them, for the vast majority of them, they were symbols of, ultimately, if you wanna be explicit about it, hate, right? And saying that whites own and run the South, then bringing them down is at least symbolic of saying that we're leaving that perspective behind. This isn't about history. So that was the point of the article, but why did I talk about this? I'm a comedian, right? What do I know, first of all? I'm just a comedian over here in Los Angeles on the left coast. Why am I speaking? I don't care about your opinion. The reason I did this is, and chose to do it now, and haven't spoken about any of these things before, was I kind of just got to a point where I think you can only hear so many things and feel so many things about them and know that you do have a platform and you do have a way to get something out there into the world, and people will listen just because you have a following, and not say something. It can only last so long. But specifically what led to that,
it can kind of eat away at you,
was my wife has kind of been doing the whole thing that I'm sure many of you do, and sort of having these Facebook arguments about things, right? And like,
which neither one of us do because we don't have personal Facebook.
I have a Facebook account that I just use to help manage the Rhett Link Facebook account, but it's not one that I use personally. But my wife has one, and she's a typical Facebook user. So
and you look over her shoulder, right?
Well, she's just sitting there with her phone or her computer, and she's like, "This is what this person said now, and now I'm going to say this." And she's very civil and very smart and articulate in the way that she communicates these things, but she's arguing with a bunch of people, mostly people back home in North Carolina, who have this perspective, which was, so many people kept saying, why are we erasing history? What's next? Are we gonna start taking down statues of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln?
Well, where did they get that line from?
Yeah, exactly. And so I was just like, okay, I can only hear—
Well, where did he get that line from?
I can only hear those things so many times before I'm just like, I'll just step in and give my perspective, because I first of all, I think it's very, we have to be very careful. When you come into a situation and you speak something into it, you have to take into account context, and you have to take into account who you are. And as a white, Southern man coming into a situation, there's a lot of baggage that I bring into any conversation, right? You bring your baggage to the conversation. And so I wanted to come at it with listen, this is the perspective that I kind of bring to this based on my background and how I've had to kind of overcome that perspective in some way. So I didn't want to come in and be like, this is what you should think about this, but it was more, this is my experience and this is what I think now. And so I just want to kind of just speak my mind, hopefully in a way that will be considered by people on both sides of the spectrum.
And I really appreciated that about your approach, was that you didn't say something to your point about baggage, you wrote about your baggage. I mean, it was a confessional in a lot of ways. It wasn't first and foremost an opinion piece. I mean, your opinions and your perspective were definitely in there, but it was through the lens of this is the baggage that I have. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna tell you about that. I think in reading the comments underneath, I mean, you gotta be signed in, you gotta have a Medium account and everything to comment there. So there's a lot of comments when I read through it that night. It's probably a lot more now. But I appreciated the tone of the conversation that was being had down there, even for some people who disagreed. But there were a lot of people who said that they appreciated. There were people who would say, I'm from England and this feels very, or I'm from, I can't remember where they said they were from, but I'm from blank, not the United States. Mm-hmm. And this is such a foreign thing for me, but it's so helpful for me to read your perspective. Mm-hmm. As a person who lived it. This, like, reading about your baggage. Yeah. Or, you know, it did make me think, when you were reiterating it here, it's like, I remember when I turned 16 and I got tapes for my truck, and it's like, I got my new Charlie Daniels greatest hits tape, and it's going through all these great Charlie Daniels songs. And then there's one that's, the South's gonna do it again. Mm-hmm. Well, do what again? And I'm like, I'm singing along with this song, and it's like, I love Charlie Daniels because of the first 9 songs on the tape, and then let's say that was the 10th one of a greatest hits album, by the way. This was not just a deep track. This is what they called a greatest hit. The South's gonna do it again. Man, I thought that was a cool ass song.
And what about Hank Williams Jr.? If the South would have won, we'd have it made. Remember that one?
Yeah, and this is the world that we lived and breathed and
we sang these songs. We sang these songs. We belted out these songs, not understanding what they meant. Never really stopping to think.
But it made me feel great.
Oh, you felt great
at the time. Yeah, I mean, because
Southern pride, man.
Southern pride.
Now, I think
but dig into it, and what does it mean?
Yeah, I think that's something. The reason that I spoke about this is that, you know, we are not interested in being political, and we definitely, when it comes to something like Good Mythical Morning, we're not interested in it having a political perspective. Not saying that we're not gonna talk about political figures or whatever, but we don't have a strong political perspective that kind of you could pin the show down as having, because we want it to be very inclusive. And that actually translates into why I talked about this, is because I actually don't think that this is a political issue, right? I don't think that you have to think a certain way about what's going on in our country right now because of your political party. But that's the way that we think. We think, what does my party think? What is my platform? What is the ideology that I have committed myself to already, that my family and my friends know that I'm committed to?
And by party, you don't necessarily mean political party. You could mean any group or tribe affiliation, if you will.
But with this issue, there is a pretty stark contrast between, you know, your political perspective based on your party. And I just think that doesn't make any sense. It's like, I don't want to know if you're a Democrat or a Republican. I don't want to know if you're a progressive or a conservative, because I actually don't think that this is a progressive versus conservative issue. I think this is just like, what are we trying to do? What do we hope our future is going to be like? Like, do we want our future to be one of unity, oneness, wholeness, love? I think 99% of people would say yes. Of course, you've got those crazy white supremacists who definitely don't want that, who want the races to be separate, and they're very vocal about that. But I still think that while there's a lot of racist undercurrent in our country, and a lot of people are racist, even if they don't know it, there's only a few people who are saying that divisive rhetoric about how we should not be whole and not be one and not be unified. But the problem is that so many people who, if you just ask them a question like, do you want the country to be more unified? Do you want people to love each other more? They would say, yes, I want that. But then they turn around and say, but I do not care enough about what the black community thinks to say, I'm willing to let this statue come down because of what it symbolizes in our past, a part of our past that we don't want to forget, but we don't want to glorify. We're not going to forget that the Civil War happened. When you take a statue of Robert E. Lee down, you're not saying, well, we're gonna forget everything about the Civil War all of a sudden. No, you don't learn history from statues. If you do, you've got a problem. You learn history from books and historians. But this is about, are we as a society gonna say, are we about oneness, wholeness, and unity, or are we about standing up for this? Where does this end? Where does this line end? It's like, no, that's a logical fallacy. It's been demonstrated many times. It's the argument from a slippery slope, and it doesn't apply to this situation. I don't want to get into the argument, but what I'm saying is that I wanted to talk about this because I don't think that it's an us versus them issue. I think it's a us issue. I think it's whether you think that the monuments should be kept up, but then contextualized properly by, like, let's put something on a plaque that says exactly what these people stood for. Well, I'd be open to that. They don't have to be torn down. I'm not like, if they're not torn down, I'm not happy. But I also don't think that as a white Southern man who used to sing Hank Williams Jr., if the South would have won, we've had it made loudly from Link's truck. I don't think I'm the best one to make the decision about whether they should come down or not, because it's not my particular situation that's being addressed here. It's like, I think we should actually ask our, the black community, what do you guys think about this? Because you're the ones that were dehumanized for hundreds of years, and then the South did fight for the right to continue to dehumanize you and hold you as slaves. So what do you guys think about these monuments? That would be a more open perspective and attitude that I think would ultimately bring about oneness and wholeness in our country, which is what we need. And that was when I was talking to you earlier about this whole overview effect, which I think is so pertinent to this. Mm-hmm. This is a term that's been around since the 80s. It's something that's been around since the first guy to go into orbit, but there's this thing called the overview effect. I actually want to read it off of Wikipedia because it's gonna be able to say it much better than me.
Go read it off of my Medium account.
The overview effect is a cognitive shift in awareness reported by some astronauts and cosmonauts during spaceflight, often while viewing the Earth from orbit or from the lunar surface. It refers to the experience of seeing firsthand the reality of the Earth in space, which is immediately understood to be a tiny, fragile ball of life hanging in the void, shielded and nourished by a paper-thin atmosphere. From space, national boundaries vanish, the conflicts that divide people become less important, and the need to create a planetary society with the united will to protect this pale blue dot becomes both obvious and imperative. That is powerful. This just takes people going up into space and looking back down at the Earth and seeing that it doesn't look like a map. There are no borders. I don't see.
Wait, what?
There are no borders, Link. That's just on a globe, sucker.
Oh, God.
And seeing us as one species, one group of people. We're all the same. We're all related. We all come from the same place. And these stupid debates about Confederate monuments and people getting so freaking mad that they're willing to drive a car into a group of people and kill somebody seems so stupid when you just take a step up or take a flight up, take a rocket ship up and look down and see the full context of our situation. I'm not trying to be divisive or divisive, whichever way you say that. I'm not trying to
build a wall.
Build a wall, right? Exactly. The last thing I think we need is a wall. We don't need a wall. We need bridges. and I'm not talking about infrastructure.
Right.
We shouldn't be, infrastructure is a problem. And I was a civil engineer. I know a lot about bridges, but we need to be building
bring Mexico into
bridges between people, not walls between people. And because.
Do you feel like, given the conversation that happened in the comments, that proved really, being one of your first forays into this type of thing, are indications that happened, or that it was still, was there still a lot of arguments busting out? If this was a vlog on YouTube, we know what the comments would look like.
Oh yeah, the YouTube comments are the most toxic place.
But you didn't do that.
Right.
So what's the assessment at this point?
Overwhelming support.
But that's a biased support.
Right. So, but what I will say
to you, maybe to fans of us.
Yeah. So, okay. In this particular atmosphere that we're in right now, standing up and saying what I said is not particularly bold, right? I mean, some people are like, "Oh, this is so bold that you stood up." Maybe we lost fans because of it. Fans that I don't care to. It's fine if we lose them, right? But I actually think that. We probably, in this atmosphere right now, the people who watch our content, I think we probably gained more fans, or there's people who are like, well, they're just on the West Coast, they're confused, they're leftist, but they're still funny, so I'll let this one slide. He doesn't know what he's talking about, he's just a comedian, why does he think? There's that whole perspective that happens. But I didn't see a whole lot of that. What I saw-
But there was some?
There were people who, just told me that I missed the point or whatever, and I kind of engaged a little bit, at least on Medium, with a couple of those people. What I've learned is that, and I learned this a long time ago, I only engage with people whose initial salvo is thoughtful. It can be critical, and it can be in disagreement with me, but if it's not thoughtful and constructive, I'm not gonna get into a conversation because I know that person is not interested in a conversation. Like I had one guy on Twitter who was like, Robert E. Lee didn't support slavery. And I was like, okay, read this article from The Atlantic, which clearly shows that he did. He was a slave owner, and he was actually recorded as being a pretty harsh slave owner. And there's the thing about, well, he was gonna fight for the Union, but he wanted to fight for the South. I'm not saying that Lincoln didn't ask him to fight for the Union, to lead the Union, but he was a slaveholder, and he was in support of slavery, and the cause that, whether he believed it or not, the cause that he was fighting for was the cause of the Confederacy, which was to continue to have slaves, which was a state right, yes, but it was the only state right that anybody cared about. All that being said, that guy read that article and said, hey, thanks, I didn't know about this. I can't believe he responded that way. But then I had a guy on Medium who was like, gave me a thoughtful response, and I kind of gave him my thoughts back, and he basically, he got a little dismissive and basically told me I was wrong. But the thing that I did see a few people who are like, thanks for writing this. I actually think differently about this now, which if one person feels differently, then it was worth my time. And then the other thing I saw is lots of people, I saw just people of color in general kind of coming up and saying, thank you for writing this. Thank you for someone in your position, a white dude in your position, doesn't have to say anything to this. No one's pressuring you. No one's expecting you to say anything. Standing up and saying this. Thank you for that. What I will say is I didn't see any people of color being like, why would you say this? That at least in the online world that I'm in, that perspective does not exist. Someone who would disagree with that opinion, who's from that background. But anyway, it's just what we try to do with our entertainment in general is we try to create a place where people can come and kind of forget about all the stuff that's going down in the world that brings people down, and there's so much of it today.
I agree. It's to create an environment where we can build bridges, where we as humans can come together and at least agree on, let's have some fun with this. These guys are eating this thing that's crazy, or.
Yeah, I mean, our show is a distraction, right? And that's why.
Can't we agree on that?
And that's why our show is not going to become a play. Like, I'm not gonna first of all, there was nothing funny in my article at all. It was just serious, right? Because I was like, I'm not writing this from a comedic perspective. Our show, for the most part, almost always, is we're trying to be funny. We're trying to be a distraction. So we're not gonna bring these types of opinions. I'm not saying it's never going to happen. Sometimes you just feel like we gotta say something about something, but that's not the purpose of our show, right? We're not Seth Meyers, who like, okay, well, I'm gonna have a closer look where I talk about Trump every couple of nights. It's like, that's what he's doing, that's his approach. That's not typically what we do. We're kind of more of like the Jimmy Fallon approach, which even when he spoke about the Charlottesville stuff, he had like a serious sort of monologue about the Charlottesville stuff, but he was like, this is not a political show. GMM is not a political show. We're not particularly political people. But when I think that there's something that's not political, this is about humanity, this is just about humans getting along, and this really transcends political party and affiliation, those are the things that we're gonna speak about when we feel like something needs to be said.
And I don't wanna dismiss our show as being just a distraction. I think we hear from a lot of people that for a lot of reasons it meets you where you are and gives you, it doesn't just distract you, somehow it gives you hope or energy to live your life. It helps.
Yeah, I mean distraction in the best possible terms.
Right, so I do believe that our show and the heart behind it is to create bridges with comedy. You know, it is kind of the same thing. The heart behind you writing that article was, I just can't remain silent on something, but I want to do it in a way you wanted to try your best to do it your way that didn't build a wall, that built bridges.
Yeah, and I think
that's what that's what we want to do with our show in general. And it's not a cheap thing just to get what maybe at points cheap laughs. That's not a cheap thing. I think we appreciate the fact that in hearing from them, the Mythical Beasts, that it is a very valuable thing. Well, and it's kind of the same thing.
One of the things that's happened, I think this has driven some perspective change for us personally, just over the decade of doing this job. We haven't been in space, okay? So we have not experienced the overview effect.
I see where you're going though.
But what we have done is we've built a fan base of it's international. It transcends borders.
Via the internet, we've seen the pale blue dot.
And so like just for
of humanity,
like between 60 and 65% of our audience is based in the U.S. But that means that over a third of our audience is outside of this country. And sometimes you just only see things in this American political lens, and that becomes your life, and you just forget that, you know, there's people who look at what's happening in our country from the outside and are like, how can you guys have come so far? How can you guys have done so much good for the world, but have so much discord? It's nuts. It's so crazy how much hate and division there is. And we've seen people, you know, it can be interesting, like we'll do something like, I remember years ago, we did something where we just thanked the American forces, you know, it may have been Veterans Day or something, where we talked about, and we'll continue to do that on those holidays and continue to thank our troops for their service. But what you see when you thank your troops for their service, then all of a sudden you've got somebody who has a different perspective on your troops and what your troops are up to. You got somebody in another country who's been negatively affected by your troops, and to see these two guys that you look up to like honoring the American troops is like, you're honoring the people who murdered my dad. You know what I'm saying? It's like, just stopping and thinking about that for a second, whether or not you think that every American war is justified or not, just stop and realize that, well, for somebody whose family got killed, none of that wasn't justified. And so, but our perspective has widened quite a bit.
And even to bring it back to a positive, I think that, it's an inspiring picture to think if all the Mythical Beasts who watch any given episode of Good Mythical Morning were in a room together. And you looked, and then you're mixed randomly. And you look to your left, you look to your right, and I think I am proud of the fact that I think a lot of people would be shocked at who was right there beside them. And who, oh, you're a mythical beast? I'm a mythical beast. You know, I think that's ultimately what we're trying to do with our show. And it's getting everyone together physically in one place. And then we'll say, everyone turn to your left and massage the person. I hate that. Don't you just hate it when the people,
I don't like
now turn to the right, massage the shoulders to your right. We would never do that.
Greasy shoulders.
But I still think the analogy holds that if we were to do that, and we're not because of the massage thing, you look to your right, you look to your left.
Not because of the logistical problems associated with it.
Get to a point where we're not shocked, but we're elated. We're all elated. And it's like, we're in this together. I have hope that our show does that.
Yeah, and you know what? And I don't think that means.
Either that or be a cosmonaut.
Yeah.
You know, you can make a choice. If you can do that instead.
And I don't think that means that you lose your ability to disagree. This is another thing that is bothers me, is that there is just no room for disagreement right now. It's like everyone disagrees, but no one can have a civil discussion. I don't think it means that you lose your political identity. I don't think if you're a small government pro-gun guy, talking to a gun control big central government person, and you're both mythical beasts, you can have a civil discussion about the merits of your platform. It doesn't, and you should be able to do that, and you shouldn't write off either of those people just based on the fact that you find out that they believe that. And you shouldn't think that they want something that's worse for humanity just because you don't want to take that small government pro-gun guy and immediately throw him into the white supremacist camp as if those two things are remotely similar. And so I just think that we're also trying to demonstrate a civil discussion and not getting mad, not hurling personal insults, not judging people, prejudging people. I'm not saying we're just beginning to kind of talk about this stuff, but we just hope that that's one of the things that's happening through our content too, is that people can come together, and then when they do disagree about something, they can have a civil discussion and realize that being your mythical best involves having a civil discussion where you realize that your common humanity supersedes your political, religious ideology.
On that note, I do want to thank you guys for being your mythical best in the conversations that you guys have with us, the feedback you give us online. It's tremendously encouraging that you got big hearts. So thanks for being a part of the conversation. #earbiscuits.
Yeah.
We'll speak at you next week. This is the Easy Letdown. Is there music? Oh, yeah.
There